Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Connie's Corner. I'm Constance, and today I am talking about my latest venture up to the Great White Way, and I am talking about Some Like It Hot. All right. So, normally, if I'm being honest, I can't see everything this channel shows to the contrary. But I mean, specifically going to New York to see things, it's difficult. But my daughter requested this. She loves this show. So she and my husband already saw it when I was phantoming earlier this late winter. Um, and then it was nominated for 13 Tonys for this previous season. And I'm like, 13 Tonys? Oh my goodness. Not that it could actually win all 13 because it had two people nominated in the same category, but let's just pretend for a second that it could have won all 13. Well, then it would have more Tonys than Hamilton, and that just got my attention. Not to give Hamilton all this hype for those of you who hate Hamilton, I'm just saying it is like one of the Toniest shows there is, you know. Because even if this won some of those Tonys, it could even outdo the producers. So I was like, okay, it's got to be producers slash Hamilton level good, or is the competition just that, flimsy? So let's talk about it. All right, Some Like It Hot. Now, what I need to point out very specifically about the day that we went, we did, well, this is arguable. I don't mind seeing understudies. The day we went, technically, if you're going to see what all the fuss is about, Tony Award wise, was not a good day. Um, Jay Harrison Gee, who won Best Leading Performance by an actor in a musical, um, was not there that day, nor was Adriana Hicks, who plays Sugar. We had two major stand-ins. So the role of Jerry slash Daphne was played by Demarius R. Copes. Again, I'm going to put that here because I always worry that I butcher names. And Sugar was played by Kayla uh, Pick. Her name right here. I'm going to butcher it. Starts with a B. I'm going to be honest. I all I had was the cast recording to go by, and I haven't listened to it that much. I thought they did great. I especially Demarius. I thought he was a very good Jerry slash Daphne. Very very good. Very strong. Um, a lot of the actors in this show were nominated, all except for our Sugar, which I find interesting because if you don't know, you probably do know. Some Like It Hot is a very famous classic movie directed by Billy Wilder. So, and it stars Marilyn Monroe. She was already, she is somebody, but it also has Tony Curtis in it and Jack Lemmon. These are considered Hollywood royalty, you know, insta classics. So I'm always leery. I'm not a big fan, I've mentioned on this channel, of let's take a movie and make it into a stage show. But this movie is old enough. It's not like from the 80s or 90s or 2000s. And in universe, they do, they're musicians and they play music and they have songs in universe. So this is not a weird stretch to make this into a show. And I have to say it translates beautifully. But I do find it interesting that, so I'll just do some quick name dropping here. Um, so the character of Sweet Sue, who is also in the movie, played by Natasha Yvette Williams, was nominated for Best Featured Actress. Christian Broyle plays Joe slash Josephine. He was nominated along with Jay Harrison Gee, who did win. And our Osgood was played by, I want to make sure I say his name right, Kevin Del Aguila. I'm so bad at this. Okay, but he was also nominated for Best Supporting Featured Actor. So everybody who's a major character except for Spats, I would say, was nominated except for Sugar. I find that a little sus because what people remember is Marilyn Monroe. I mean, they might remember Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon as well. I did watch an interview of the creators of this show, and they did say they were trying to make sure they distance themselves from all things Marilyn Monroe. Maybe it's because we've already had a musical named Sugar. I never saw it. I didn't know about it until this musical came out. So maybe they were just really trying to keep themselves distant from all things Marilyn, including that. So I find that interesting. I gotta say that Kevin R. Osgood, my absolute favorite. He stole my heart. Loved him. Absolutely loved him. Now, well, I should say this: spoilers for the movie and this show. This stage adaptation is faithful to the movie to an extent. The overall plot's the same. If you haven't seen the movie, you haven't seen the stage show, you don't want spoilers. Um, I mean, it is a comedy, but the only way to spoil a comedy is to give away jokes. I'm not going to necessarily do that. But if you don't want to know anything specific, I can give you some general thoughts first. It's a very neutral show. Like I know a lot of people are afraid because of the representation. Like it does touch on race. It tries to bring that element into it. It does talk about gender identity because otherwise this is following that trope of a man in a dress, some are pointing and laughing at him. So they're trying to make that more sensitive, which is appropriate. It's not woke. I would not call it, I don't throw that term around loosely anyway. But I would not call this show that. I think it's so charming. It's so endearing and it's so sincere. And it really reads like a Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers kind of musical. Like if you've ever seen Top Hat, this the whole as it unfolded in front of me, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm watching Top Hat on stage. So it's just a feel good classic. It feels like an old timey show, but it's not so old timey that you can't relate to it. I think that's why they bring all the elements that they do so that it feels relative to now. It feels current. It feels like it represents our current landscape and what we're all going through as a culture right now. But I don't think those things come in just to check a box or overbear the production. So if you're worried about anything political, I wouldn't. I just think it's just so sweet that you don't have to be afraid of that. So if you were on the fence like me, because I honestly my daughter pushed me off the fence, but if you're on the fence and that's the reason why you're like, well, I don't know if I want to see that. I think it's very benign, but I don't easily get offended. So take that with a grain of salt. So why don't we get into like baby spoilers? So let's talk about the changes, not just the obvious ones. We'll get to that in a minute, but I want to talk about some smaller ones. So they change a couple things. If you're familiar with the plot of the movie, it starts off with these two musicians, Jerry and Joe, who are down on their luck. They witness a murder and they have to disguise themselves as women to join an all women band because they're musicians and they find this girl band. And it's during the Prohibition era. That's relevant to an extent because the murder they witness is due to a gangster bootlegger thug kind of guy. So it's relevant. And they go on tour with this band. And in the movie, they end up in Florida, but in the stage show, they actually go all the way to California and they even dip into Mexico for a minute. So they change locations. They make the traveling part longer. And while they're just as women, Joe starts to fall for the lead singer, whose name is Sugar. And so it's all this craziness of he's pretending to be a man that's not himself to protect himself, but he's pretending to be a woman to keep himself safe. Eventually, the mob catches up with him, and there's hijinks, and it does end well. Also, uh, Jerry becomes the object of affection to a millionaire named Osgood, who I spoke about just a minute ago. And so you have two couples trying to reconcile what's going on with them because there's a lot of deceit going on. There's pretending, but they're just lovable scamps, and all's forgiven, and it ends happy. All right. So I like the change of going to California. I like that they kind of go on tour and they have stops along the way, just to show that everyone in the band starts to grow a relationship, and we spend way more time in California with Daphne and Osgood's character, and they flush Osgood out. Like I don't like Osgood the character in the movie at all. He's just this dirty old man. Now, in the stage show, he starts off in the same way because he just sees Daphne. He's like, oh, I'm in love. And he kind of, is kind of creeping on her a little bit. But he's so sincere. I mean, he just melt my heart. So the opening to Act Two, he convinces Daphne to run away to Mexico for the night just to go and play. And they have this beautiful heart to heart where he kind of reveals some things about himself. He's also hiding some things. And so they change his character as well so that he has a race issue. And so it makes him more relatable to Daphne. Like they both have secrets and they both are like, right, I can be this way with you, but I also want to be the real me around you. And I'm because I have to pretend to be this and pretend to be this. It starts to get blurry about who the real you even is. I feel like that's a good message in the overall show is what is your identity, not just at the gender level, but on all levels. I think you can go past gender for this. So I think that's a good development. They changed Joe's character a little bit. Um, he has a moment towards the end where he kind of gets a song where he reflects on should I be tricking this girl? I do like her. If I want to have a real future with her, I can't pretend to be this guy and I can't pretend to be a woman. Like, so he realizes he has to fess up. And also, unlike in the movie, he realizes he has to be a better friend to Daphne. So I think his ending is better. My big complaint about the movie is it kind of just stops. Like they're like, and the end. Now I don't know how reliable this is, but I heard that when they wrote the movie, they actually had a page that said, "Oh, the world's not ready for what happens next," seeming to imply that there's more that they would have gone uh, more controversial, but the times weren't ready for it. So maybe that's the other reason why it's good that we're doing this stage show now, because since we're having these difficult conversations, some successful more than others, but this is another step toward having a healthy conversation and give an example of it's really just okay. Like it's not the all cap big deal thing that you're all those of you who are afraid of trans or non-binary, whatever you want to call like the proper verbiage. It's not this big scary thing. I think this is a nice harmless way to show, hey, we don't have to be afraid. Let's just talk about it. And just be accepting, like just that whole be kind, how more and more when I go out in public, I see people with shirts and stuff, and it's like, just be kind. It's like, yeah, we all should just practice that. I think this show is kind of in that direction. It's not super preachy. I was afraid it would be. Now, to deal with the Marilyn Monroe comparison, they did say, oh, what if Sugar was black? So Sugar being black was on purpose right from the onset. So her character is black. Jerry slash Daphne is black. Sweet Sue is black. And then there's various other characters. I don't know if they necessarily have been given proper names. Oh, there's a couple like Minnie, Dolores, Ginger, Toothpick, Charlie. Like, okay. Obviously, so it's mixed race. So I don't know if they're like, what if we lived in reality where let's show people of color who are trying to get ahead. Like, so Sweet Sue is very different in the stage show. She doesn't just run the band and then disappears like how she does in the movie. She's really trying to show how she's trying to get ahead, how she's just trying to survive prohibition and, just hard times. And a few times they bring up race, but I don't know how well they did it. Now, again, we saw some understudies, so I don't know if this was an understudy I saw, but they try to make this very important scene first with Jerry, his character, and then Sweet Sue, where they're not coming out and saying it, but they're basically saying, because you're black, we're not going to pay you, or because you're black, we're not going to hire you, something like that. And I forget which one it was. I meant to make a note. It happened, but this did happen with at least one of them. The person who was saying this on stage, the person who was saying lines was also black. So I was confused. I was like, are we colorblind in this show or not? Because it's weird that the big wig, I think it was the one talking to Jerry going, I'm not hiring you because you're black. He didn't say that, but he meant that. And I was like, but you're black. I'm a little confused. So I'm like, look, if race is important, you can't have the black guy saying to another black guy, we're not going to hire you because you're black. That didn't make sense. So I don't know what that was about, unless that person was an understudy. but I think it's weird that the understudy, they're like, right, but we have to maintain the race line so that when they say the words in the context of the world that we're presenting, it makes sense. So there was something a little funny there. I did read some criticisms about the show. It opened back in December. It is now July. I saw the show a couple weeks ago, but I've been busy, so I haven't had time to do this. Um, People were worried about the man in the dress trope because of Mrs. Doubtfire, Tootsie. But this is not doing at all what those shows. I haven't seen them, but from the movie versions, this is very different. And people were complaining about the race thing, and I agree with the race thing about like it's weird that they bring it up and then it kind of goes away. It's almost like they want to be like, woohoo, we brought up race. Blah, check your privilege. And then it doesn't talk about it, or it doesn't do it as like clearly, succinctly, so that you definitely walk away like this is the takeaway. So I don't know if they were just afraid to, or maybe I just didn't catch it. That's possible. I am not the smartest person. I will be the first to admit. So if you think Some Like It Hot, the current stage version on Broadway right now, does address race cleanly in a way where at the end you go, okay, this is what they meant. And they did satisfy that arc. Feel free to tell me about it. I just didn't catch it. I felt like it was brought up, but then not resolved. And it's okay. The resolution is there is no resolution, but say something, do something with it. It just felt a little empty. It's not that you can't take it there. It just felt like they didn't, it felt so half-assed. Like, okay, but if you're going to bring it up, give it some chutzpah. Because I think all the gender stuff was done beautifully. So the one race thing that I liked, again, they changed Osgood so that he's of Mexican descent, I believe, or at least Hispanic. And so he's explaining to Daphne that he has to hide who he really is. If he doesn't play the part, then he won't get treated the way he gets treated because he can pass as white and he has his millionarity and all that. So like, oh yeah, it's a protective shell, but it's still a mask. He still has to be fake. It's I mean, I know you could say, oh, cry me a river, poor little rich boy, but it's a different kind of problem. And he just met Daphne. He has no reason to divulge this to her at all. So the fact that he does is very, very sweet. So that's about that. All the acting was really, really good. Um, do I think they all deserve to be nominated? Christian Broyle has done a lot. I have never found he was there that day. I've never seen him in person, but I've seen all of his pro shots that are available. I saw him in Smash, that disaster TV show. I know he was in Peter Pan Live and Sound of Music Live, and he was in Falsettos and Legally Blonde, I believe. Like, I've seen a tape of him, but I was like, oh, I'm in the room with him. He wasn't amazing. Not the way. Now, all I have of Jay Harrison is the cast album, but Jay Harrison's nomination made way more sense. So I don't know if they thought they had to not, I mean, it's not a rule. You don't have to nominate both. I'm still mad that the Tony Awards this year had 6 nominees for the actor and only 5 for the actress. That I'm just gonna stay mad about that. Did Christian Broyle need to be there? I know he's never won for a leading role, but I don't know. I think that was just okay. So why take the spot? Natasha Yvette Williams, her acting was really good. The only thing I didn't like about Sweet Sue, and this is not her fault, this is a writing thing. I thought it was weird that her character was constantly picking on Josephine's character. That they have this running joke about like, oh, you're so old, ah, and it's supposed to be really funny. But even my audience, by like the 5th time, they were just kind of like, oh, that's so mean. I do think it's weird that this show is trying to be uplifting and preach kindness, but it also shows just how evil women are to other women. Like, I don't know why that script choice was there. That has the whole, oh look, a man is in a dress and he looks terrible. So thank God they changed Daphne's character as much as they did. Oh, I didn't talk about this. I apologize. I assume everyone just knows. So the big plot change from the movie is Jerry doesn't stay hidden in a dress going, oh, I'm Jerry, but I'm pretending to be Daphne. he has a real transformation in this show where he feels more connected to Daphne because he was going to be Geraldine. That's also from the movie. And at the last second, in both the movie and here, he goes, "Oh, hi, I'm Daphne." And Joe Safine is all like, "Daphne." Maybe the movie intended to do this. I can see the interpretation going that way if the censorship wasn't so harsh back then. I don't think they're changing it for changing sake to go, oh, trans uh rights are so big right now. Let's do this so that this 1930s musical feels relevant. I don't feel that way at all. I think this was a perfect vehicle to pivot that, and it feels very organic. It doesn't feel like lip service at all. And I know I didn't see Jay Harrison. I'm sure they're lovely, but Demarius, oh, I loved him. I just loved him in this role. He sold it. I totally believe Daphne became Daphne. It was like, right, this is the true me. I've never felt quite right. Now I feel better about myself because as they journey west, it doesn't take them any time to go, hey, this feels more natural. This I feel like I'm really in my real skin for the first time, and that's all beautiful. Other people have said this, but I'll say it. The big moment in this show is when Josephine slash Joe and Daphne are having a talk when they're alone, and Joe's like, "Okay, the jig is up. I'm going to stop pretending to be a woman. I got to come clean. But we also have to get out of here to save our skins." And Daphne's like, "No, no, I'm Daphne. I'll never be Jerry again. Like this is the real me." And Daphne has this beautiful, it's like an anthem song uh, about self discovery. And at first, Joe is dismissive. Joe's like, "Oh, come on, you're not going to wear a dress for your whole life," thinking that's absurd. But I think Daphne's able to convince him, and so Joe's like, "Well, what do I call you? Like, what do you want to go by? Are you Jerry or are you Daphne?" And Daphne says, "You can call me either one as long as you do it with respect." And that got a round of applause. That's a very good line because it doesn't feel preachy. It's succinct. It gets to the point quickly. We don't dwell on it. Everything that needs to be said is wrapped up in that very simple, clear, direct sentence. You don't need a giant monologue explaining why this is important. That totally hit the nail on the head. So, very well done. All right, so I want to move on to other elements because again, this was nominated for 13 Tonys. Did it deserve it? Well, I mean, this really was like musical the musical. A lot of scenery, and a lot of it flies or slides. It looks expensive. A train comes on stage and then opens up. And the whole first act is all art deco. I mean, it's beautiful. The hotel is beautiful. I love when we're in Mexico. Oh my gosh. They go to this like cantina type place. Beautiful. The costumes are beautiful. They have a lot of costumes, especially Sugar. Um, I do think Daphne's costumes are the best because I feel like he doesn't look like a man in a dress and it's all awkward. They obviously this is to make a point, but it is interesting that the clothes that Daphne wears are very tailored and they really suit Daphne's body very well. Whereas Joe Safine definitely has that I'm a man in a dress, and so he's frumpy and we're laughing at it. So it's kind of doing the thing that people who don't like that trope are afraid of. But since we have two men in a dress and one we're supposed to take more seriously, I don't know if that's supposed to like um, counter what they're doing with Josephine. I do feel like those jokes are tasteless. I would not have gone there. Um, Daphne's costumes are beautiful, and it actually I think it won costumes if I remember right. Eh, I don't know about that. The choreography. Now it won best choreography. Totally deserves. So at the end of the show, the mobster who knocks a guy off and wants to kill Joe and Jerry slash Daphne for being witnesses. Of course, catches up to them in California. Now they do a much better thing than the movie. In the movie, he kind of just magically is in the same place at the same time. How convenient. Here, he kind of gets a tip, he kind of gets a feeling, so he's able to kind of track them down. So they fix the script there. So when he catches up to them and they're in the hotel, they have this huge chase scene throughout the whole hotel, and it's all a giant tap number. Now that sounds like a gimmick. That sounds really like, but it's actually quite good. I'm sure rehearsing that and working that out, because they have a series of doors that swivel and people are changing costumes and it's all like, it has to be timed perfectly. I'm sure that was exhausting. So it completely deserves choreography. But 13 Tonys overall. I don't know if this was a 13 Tony nominated worthy show. I don't know if it really was worthy of all 13. I don't know if that's to say the other shows just didn't have enough chutzpah, so that's why it didn't really have competition, or if people were just feeling generous. I mean, because it does steal your heart. I mean, there's a sequence where um, Joe, he's pretending to be a whole other man named Kip, is on a date with Sugar, and they're on a boat, and then the boat disappears, and there's a star drop behind him, and a grand staircase appears, and there's the chorus shows up in ballroom gowns, and there's fog. It really is like Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers. It's just like Top Hat and movies like that. I'm like, oh my god, this is a Astaire Rogers moment. It's so sweet. Um, Unnecessary. I don't know. I don't know if they were just so worried that people wouldn't connect, and so they're like, we got to make it a crowd pleaser, and so they do all these crowd pleasing things. It's not that it doesn't work. It did. My theater was not full. I definitely think it was at like 70%. I was shocked at how many empty seats were around us, but I mean, the audience that was there had a good time. The songs themselves, I mean, to me, musicals live or die by their songs. The songs all felt the same, with the exception of, I want to make sure I get the title right. It's and of course it's Osgood's song. Oh, Fly Mariposa Fly. Now I'm a sucker for mariachi music. So mariachi band members come on stage while he's singing Mariposa to Daphne. I love that song, but it sounds different because it has mariachi qualities to it. But I don't know, it all felt bluesy, jazzy. You definitely could. They didn't have to tell you it was 1930s Chicago slash California. You could tell the style of music gave that away. They're not bad songs. I just felt like I was listening to the same song again and again and again. Like Sugar has like four ballads. It was the same thing four times. Maybe it wasn't four, but more than one. So I mean, they're fun. Would not make bad elevator music. That sounds so mean. It's not offensive. It's just not special. When you see Hadestown, which is very different, and then you see this, I mean, it's like culture shock, because Hadestown is just doing some really weird orchestral things and genre mixing, and that's not some like Hot's fault. I felt like the music was just fine. I think it does fix the movie. So in the great debate in my own head of, should they have made this movie into a stage show? Well, I know the movie's a classic, but I do think the stage show is better. I'm always going to think that. And even though this was a movie first and not a musical, normally I hate that combo. In this case, I do think, especially the ending, once they arrive at the hotel, from the hotel sequence to the very end, stage show superior to the film, far and away. I don't think they know what to do with Spat's character in general, but it's a lot better here, a lot better. Now during the chase scene, if you want to talk about pointing out the funny man in a dress thing, they're all chasing each other, and Spats thinks he's caught either Daphne or Josephine, And it turns out to be the head lieutenant guy, um, who's in a dress, and he really plays up the whole "I'm a guy who can't walk in heels." Meh, meh, meh. It and they did it for laughs, and because of the kind of crowd that was there, we went to a matinee, so it was an older crowd. They laughed, but I sat there and I was like, "Well, I don't think this is very funny." Not because I thought it was offensive. I just felt like it was tired. I'm like, this is not an original joke. It's not fresh. I don't. It didn't bother me. I just didn't care. Um, but overall, the how they handle spats is different, and the movie is so abrupt. So Sugar finds out that Josephine is Joe very quickly, and she just kind of goes, oh, "Okay," and they accept it, and the end. Title card. Um, they have a little bit more breathing room here. So Sugar and Joe actually have a conversation like, "Well, how dare you lie to me? You know, why should I trust you? You're right. You shouldn't trust me. I'm a terrible person." Like, I think they have a very nice conversation. So it's better. It's not awesome, but it's better. So if you're, again, are you on the fence? I say go check it out. I think, again, it's just fun. It's so charming. It's light. It Even though it has very important topics, it doesn't feel weighed down by them. It actually feels elevated by them. Um, if you're into edgy and you want really heavy cerebral think pieces, well, this is not the show for you. This show is not for everyone. But I think if you're like, look, my life is stressful. I need a reason to smile. I'm not feeling so good. This is a feel good musical. This will make you feel better. You know, just go in with an open heart, and the whole everything can have a happily ever after, because they certainly do in this story. And I think they do it well. So those are my thoughts on Some Like It Hot. I'm glad my daughter asked me to go see it with her, and I do recommend it. So until next time, that's it for today. So bye.